On May 7th, 2023, we brought home this beautiful, pre-loved 2006 Sunline 26-foot tow behind camper.
We've been living in it for over a year now, and when we initially purchased it, we thought that our house would be ready by that winter, but obviously it's not finished, and we are still living in the camper.
In this video, we want to share everything we've learned after over a year of RV living with our dog, especially through one of the snowiest and coldest winters we've had here in many years.
It's been great overall, but we have some lessons learned that we'd like to share with you, especially if you're looking to live in an RV full-time, whether you're traveling all over the country or doing a long-term building project like us and you have permanent hookups. If you haven't seen any of our other RV living videos, we purchased this RV after we had electric, septic, and water hookups. So we have permanent hookups.
They're semi-permanent. I mean, electric, we have like a flex cable out to a little pedestal with a 30-amp plug. The water is a garden hose, and then our septic hookup is a long pipe propped on a bunch of rocks down to our septic tank inlet. So it works. Those are the three main things you need, and I feel like that takes away all of the headache that like traveling RV lifers have to go through with just constantly unhooking and rehooking the utilities, finding a place to go dump waste, and finding a place to hook up utilities and park. That aspect makes full-time RV living like on your property for a long-term build project or whatever, where you're not going to be moving this thing, a lot easier. And really, these things are well designed to habitate in as a human. They have great heat and AC because the space is so small, it heats up like that. Insulation is not good, but at least the space is small, so it stays relatively comfortable year-round. Sorry, our dog started barking and we have to bring him in the video, so he's not barking anymore.
Come on, Bubby.
Come on, bud. There we go. This is George, if you haven't met George before. He's an 8-year-old senior dog, as the vet likes to call him. He's a senior. He's still young at heart. He acts, I would say, like a middle-aged dog. 40-something-year-old.
George, what do you have to say about living in an RV? Nothing.
No comment. Anyway, like I said, the heat and AC are great in this thing. Hot and cold running water, a kitchen sink, a gas stove, a refrigerator, Wi-Fi, a decent bed, natural light. Pretty much all you need for a couple people and a small dog. More than that would be a little bit tricky. Having kids in an RV or like more than one pet or something like that would be definitely tight on space, especially in one that's this size. Like I said, this is a 26-footer, so it's not the smallest RV that you can possibly find, but it's also not a big fifth wheel, 38-foot thing.
And this RV doesn't have any bump outs, so the space is even a little bit smaller than some of the RVs, because with that bump out, you can get extra space, but you would probably have to cover up that area on the roof, because whenever we were looking at some on Facebook, that's where a lot of water damage occurred, was right where that bump out comes into the RV. So if you had it out all of the time, that might provide some challenges with water.
And overall, we haven't had like too many repair situations to do here. The main things, well, the storm was probably the worst. That ripped this awning open really quickly. It wasn't fully locked, which was sort of our fault, but it ripped the awning open and it bent the side arms a little bit so they don't really lock into the travel position anymore. And then the very tops of the awning also got a little bit ripped on either side. It's probably about ready to get replaced anyway, but the storm hurt that a little bit, and it still works, so we still use it. And then of course the window that's next to the entry door, that got broken by a flying stick in the storm. It's been almost a year now that we have had packaging tape over that, and it has not leaked. So thanks to 3M for making some great packaging tape. It seems to be holding just fine, and we've had some pretty severe rainstorms since then on that window. Other than the storm damage, it's been, I did have to caulk the perimeter again. I just scraped all the existing old caulk that was like the consistency of like Play-Doh by this point. The roof was leaking a little bit in the bedroom, but that was quickly fixed by scraping the caulk and then slathering Lexel all over the top of it to try to seal that. And actually that was last summer too, and it is also held. The roof has not leaked since then, so that's pretty impressive to me anyway. We did have to do some repair in the corner. I think we talked about in the 5-month in video, the hose entry started leaking behind the wall, so it was kind of underneath the futon. We thought the hot water heater was leaking, but we had to tear apart that whole corner. We took the futon out and had to like replace some of the floor.
It was pretty bad.
That was probably one of the more extensive repairs we had. Actually, that's the most extensive repair we've had to do. And yeah, that was just due to a water leak. And
we suspect it was there before we even purchased, but maybe just hadn't been tended to.
When I took it apart, it was missing a washer inside the like stack up that was inside the RV. So I'm not really sure how that happened, but replaced the washer. It's been good since. Anyway, let's go for a little tour. We'll talk about a bunch of other, points and tips and tricks we've learned while we're in there. Let's check it out.
But Georgie says I'm having fun. Say hi.
You ready, Mr. Dog? Full disclosure, we did clean this top to bottom today just before starting this video, so this is definitely about as clean as it's gonna get. We did a full grand tour of the space in the very first video, so we're not gonna go through all those same details, but here's just a quick overview of what everything looks like. Fridge, pantry, here's how the bathroom's laid out. There is a full shower tucked in here, which was definitely a must-have criteria when we were looking for these. And then the bedroom in the back has got not quite a queen size, but I think it's a full size. Not a whole lot of room around the bed, but hey, it works. The real purpose of this video is to talk about all of the lessons learned and little tips and tricks and stuff like that. So that's what we're just gonna go kind of piece by piece. We made a small list of all the various things that we have picked up on, and we'll just go through them now.
Although the RV that we purchased does have a pretty significant amount of storage for the space, some of the most challenging things to store were clothes, specifically winter work gear. So jackets, insulated overalls, all of those things ended up in a pile on top of George's crate. So unfortunately, Georgie kind of had a little cave created for him with all of that in the winter. The other thing with winter was all of the mud that we would track in with our boots. We have a house rule that you're only allowed to have one pair of shoes out at a time because we have such little space. Luckily, we have this little cabinet here. If I open it, it just looks like a mess because all of the shoes are just
that's the shoe closet
thrown in there. So that was definitely a challenge. There used to be a chair here when we purchased this RV. We got rid of that within like the first 5 days of having it because we knew we wanted to put George's crate here. It becomes a little bit awkward when you have more than just Alex and I here to eat dinner. We have to bring out like folding chairs or like those soccer chair kind of things. And so we have done that multiple times with mainly just our family, but it becomes a little bit of a challenge to cook. One thing I really like about this RV in particular is that the table is on like a slider, so we can kind of move it out and closer to the couch as we need to, which makes it really nice for working on our computers.
Not to mention this big back window is probably one of the nicest features because, well, the skid steer's in the way, but the edge of this woods here where this, kind of brushes is a kind of a bird sanctuary. So we get to do a lot of bird watching out this window. There's a lot of really beautiful birds that habitate around here, so it's nice to be able to watch them while we're working. And
I don't know if you can see it, but Georgie's run line is right there, and that's kind of strategically placed so that we can keep an eye on him.
But we've done quite a bit of computer work and editing here. That's our hard drives over there with all of our video stuff on it. So we have spent quite a few hours on this little futon here. Which also another pro tip, get a futon cover. This is just an Amazon cover that we put on top of the original futon, and that saved it from all the wear and tear and dirt that otherwise we would have been putting right onto the native futon fabric. Elena mentioned all the winter clothes. Laundry in general is a little bit of a pain living in an RV, so we are lucky enough to be close enough to my mom's house where we used to live to use her laundry, so probably once a week or so we'll take a load over there and do it in her washer and dryer.
It does kind of take away time from the day because once we go over there to do laundry, we're kind of stuck there for 2 to 4 hours, which isn't a terrible thing because my garden's still over there, so usually now that we're in spring and summer time frame, I can throw in a load, go do stuff outside, care for our laying hens that are still there. We have some chicks here, which maybe we'll feature on this video. But yeah, so I'll do some of the caretaking with the stuff we have there while laundry's running.
Otherwise, we'd be going to the laundromat in town, which not a big deal. That might be a little bit quicker, I guess, but yeah, we'd just be stuck sitting there doing editing or something in the meantime.
On the topic of Georgie, he hears a lot of things at night, and when we first were sleeping in here, he had the habit of barking at 2 a.m. in the morning almost every single night.
Do you hear that? Oh my goodness. What the heck is going on? And he's off.
So we were like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? We can't live like this for the next however long. We ended up purchasing a sound machine, and it actually has worked wonders. I don't know if anyone else has tried this with their dog, but basically all you do is turn it on.
And it's just like a fan.
And there's a fan in there.
It just makes like white noise. That's literally it.
And we turn that on, and it works so well at preventing him from hearing whatever is outside, whether it's a fox, raccoon, or anything else.
And it's just pretty relaxing, like when we're trying to sleep.
Yeah.
It just provides white noise.
Yeah.
To put you to sleep.
Also, I think we mentioned this in our last video, but we use T-Mobile Wi-Fi. This is about $50 a month, and it works really, really well. It's the best option that we have here, and we're definitely going to use this in the main house as well.
Yeah, you really cannot beat the price for what it is, and the wireless router works really, really well too. Like, we get signal inside the house, we can take video calls inside the house, and that's like 50, 60 feet away at least. So it's impressive how strong the Wi-Fi is as well. We'll use this as the router inside the house for sure. On top of the T-Mobile router, this little gadget is just your basic humidity and temperature monitor, which was invaluable during winter.
Very quickly into the colder months, we realized that we were going to have a serious humidity problem in here, and we initially purchased some cheap Amazon small little humidity.
Yeah, like a
with
mini
a
dehumidifier.
Yeah.
Yeah, just save your money and do not buy one of those things. They don't work. Get a full-size real dehumidifier if you're planning to be in an RV in the winter. You generate a heck of a lot of humidity cooking, showering, and breathing. And between those three things, you're filling this small enclosed box with moisture in the air, and it's really cold outside, right? So it basically is like reverse soda can effect. All the insides of the walls and the
windows,
of the poorly insulated walls, I should say, and then the very thin windows will start condensing, and you'll get water on the inside of your windows. And that can even freeze too if it's cold enough outside and the window's frozen. So keeping indoor humidity in the winter down in RVs is imperative.
For your health too, to prevent any sort of mold buildup.
Right.
We had a large size dehumidifier, and we just kept it in the bathroom at all times. We didn't run it all throughout the day. Basically, we could tell based on how much condensation was forming on the windows or based on the temperature outside.
And this little guy, it gives you obviously a readout of the percent of humidity, which you can't really feel until it's really bad. So just knowing when it's like above or below 50% and we needed to turn the dehumidifier on was pretty helpful.
Now let's talk the kitchen. You can see we don't have very much space to work with here. There's no dishwasher. I'm the dishwasher. Alex the dishwasher. We take turns.
Built-in dishwasher right here.
No, Alex and I take turns washing dishes, but there's really just very limited counter space. I drink coffee every morning. I make it in a French press because this takes up the least amount of space. But anyways, that has been the biggest challenge. So how we primarily cook is we either use the burner, which is typically for eggs in the morning, or we're using an Instant Pot or a steamer. That's been our meals for the past year primarily. We don't do anything extravagant. I think we've only used the oven once. It does work, but it's just a process because there's no way to really gauge the temperature. We would have to like put a thermometer in there, and it's just easier to use an Instant Pot at this point. For the counter space, there's literally only 2 square feet, so a lot of times we will be putting our cutting board here, prepping stuff, putting it in the Instant Pot, having dirty dishes over here, and to say we're excited for a kitchen is an understatement because This has just not been working.
I mean, it works fine.
It
It's
works.
just this drying rack has been a lifesaver. It becomes kind of a separate counter spot, and then so does the stove. We try to keep them as clean as we can, just so it's not too cluttered. A lot of times we'll have a lot of dishes on the drying rack, so sometimes we can't use that for counter space.
It's safe to say we will not be canning any vegetables in here. We won't be doing any sauces or salsa
nothing complicated.
There's just not enough space. We mentioned that our water hookup is through a hose, so we don't really want to drink the water that's coming out of the sink. We buy jugs and then we'll refill them several times before we go and buy new ones. And this is what we use for our drinking water.
We're refilling the jugs inside. We do have a working toilet and sink in our little downstairs half bath, which has been a huge savior because in the winter, it gets crazy cold. Obviously, we're in Pennsylvania. It freezes daily here in the winter. So that garden hose that feeds the water out here freezes. It usually is thawed out like in the middle of the day, but as soon as the sun goes down, it almost always froze and we had no water in here. So having a working toilet and sink in there all through the winter really helped a lot. And it made living in the RV through the winter much more sustainable, as well as just having the house to put all of our stuff in. Like we could keep, turn that off. That's the AC about to come on. It's kind of loud. So that is also one feature of the AC that we are looking forward to in the real house. It's not nearly as loud. You can have a normal conversation while the thing's on. But yeah, just having the house where we could put all of our winter clothes that just didn't fit in here, or just all of our boots and shoes and tools and everything else like that was really nice.
With the water freezing, we had to basically time whenever we would wash our dishes. So if it was a day where it was actually going to get warm enough where the hose would unfreeze, we would have our dishes stacked and ready to wash. But there were probably 2 or 3 different separate weeks where it was freezing the entire day. So I would like take them in a bucket and I would carry them, or actually it was a basket, it was a harvest basket.
Yeah.
And I would take them inside, wash them inside, let them dry, and then bring them in. So that was inconvenient, but in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a big deal.
It worked. And the sink we have in that downstairs bathroom is a 2-foot by 4-foot utility sink. So it's huge. And yeah, we can give George baths in there and wash any dishes or anything else we need there as well. Another thing we wanted to mention about winter RV living is the mice, especially because we're near the edge of the woods where the mice are, and if they can sense that there's a little warm area that they can sneak into, they're gonna try to do it. So we probably caught 12 to 20 mice, I would say, this winter in here. And some of that is our fault. You know, sometimes we left some dishes out that might have had some food on or whatever that helped attract them, but we got pretty good at catching mice. In fact, the stove top is propped up a little bit because we have a mouse trap down in there in case any, you know, stragglers try to come this summer up in here. That was a pretty popular spot for them into the stove. Same thing in the drawers. They would find their ways into the drawers, and actually we've moved all of our silverware and stuff up here to this top cabinet to keep the mice out. So literally all of our plates, forks, knives, cups, everything are up in this cabinet right here, which surprisingly works for the size of this cabinet. But we just have like scissors and, you know, non-food related items down here because we're just trying to keep the mice out of the drawers. We've also found that peppermint oil on like cotton balls really deters the mice. I don't know what it is, but they don't like peppermint oil. I think Elena found that online somewhere, but it actually seems to work pretty well. Now that it's summer and it's warm out, the mice can be out in the woods and they have no problem living out there. So it's not really a problem in the warm seasons, but when it's cold, they definitely want to come in somewhere where it's warm.
Even though we have a pretty small freezer and fridge, we found that they have worked really well. The one downside to having a small freezer is that we're not able to buy bulk local meat like we usually do. So we've been just going weekly to the grocery store and purchasing it that way. But one thing that we have planned for the house is to have a large stand-up freezer under the stairs. So that will be super nice once we can get that here and plug that in, and then we can stock it up with meat. But as far as the fridge goes, it's been the perfect size. Honestly, it holds about a week.
Here's our fridge tour. It's definitely bigger than like a normal mini fridge. Like there's really a lot of food that you can fit, especially down in here. It's plenty for 2 people. Sometimes you got to get a little creative. There's a pretty good sized pantry cabinet underneath the fridge as well. We keep all of our like Tupperware and stuff in here. And then this is a big rollout pantry that we keep quite a bit of food in as well. So they've done a good job at making the most of this space around this fridge for sure. A note on heating the RV, it's a propane fired furnace. There's 2 tanks at the front of the trailer that can be hooked up simultaneously, and there's a valve that you can switch between them. That's another repair I've actually had to do. I forgot about that. I had to replace those hoses. Either a mouse or a squirrel actually chewed through one of the hoses. So we had a pretty big propane leak one day and figured out that was the reason. Anyway, we probably spent around $100 a month in the very dead of the winter on propane. It was like 1 tank a week, I would say, we went through. So just a gauge if you're thinking about staying in an RV through the winter. It's roughly the same as the propane bill that we paid for to do all the radiant heating in the house. So it's clearly a lot more inefficient to heat this very poorly insulated little box than it is the whole house. Well, actually, the house didn't have insulation in it either and didn't have any air sealing, so maybe it's about even. But that at least gives you somewhat of a gauge. 1 tank per week, roughly, where we're at in Pennsylvania. It would be more in a colder climate. But that came out to about $100 a month, 80 to 100 a month. We found the AC combined with all the rest of the power we use, like on the job site, we're spending about $100 a month in the peak season and like 70 or so in non-peak.
On the topic of winter and heating the space, one thing I highly recommend is if you are going to spend the winter in the RV, buy a heated mattress pad. Heated mattress pads are relatively inexpensive. I think they're between $50 and $100, but we would put that on the bed and turn that on low, and that allowed us to keep the temperature down in here to stretch that propane a little bit longer. It really didn't matter to us. We would have turned it up if we wanted to, but those heated mattress pads work really, really well, and we already were used to using them because at the old farmhouse we used to live in, there was like no heat that would get to the 2nd floor, so having the heated mattress pad would help keep us warm at night.
And the weighted blanket.
Weighted blankets are super nice. You can find them that are 100% cotton. We just got one for a gift from our wedding, but there's also ones that have like beads in them, and that's what makes it weighted. It just depends on what you're looking for.
Here's one of the realities of having a doggo with you in the RV. This was perfect condition carpet before, and he gets a little nervous when we're not in here and likes to do some scratchies. So before we sell this, we're gonna have to come through and try to repair some of this carpet, cut these little frays out. He's done this on either side of the bed as well. It's thunderstorms or if he's just bored. Sometimes we just hear him scratching in here for no reason. George, isn't that right? Yes, that's you I'm talking to.
Overall, the bathroom has worked pretty well for us. We don't really have any complaints. The most challenging part is the shower timing and how long you can actually shower. First of all, you have to turn on the hot water heater about at least 30 minutes before you actually want to shower.
We could keep it on. It's electric. We could keep it on all the time, but
Gotcha.
It's probably not the most efficient, so we just turn it off.
Yeah, so you have to make sure you turn it on at least 30 minutes in advance. And then the other thing is that the shower is limited to about like 3 to 5 minutes, which is fine if you're a guy, but if you're a girl and you have to wash your hair, it takes quite a while. You just know that you're on a timer and you shower as quick as you can and get out. So definitely looking forward to a longer shower once we get into the new place.
It's a 6-gallon water heater and it's either electric or gas or both actually you can use. So it recovers pretty quickly, but if you're just running a constant shower, it will run out on you and it gets a little bit cool. But it's good motivation on saving water.
The storage in the bathroom has been pretty good. This is a medicine cabinet, so...
Open it up, see what's inside. Our toothbrushes, deodorants, stuff
Face
like
wash.
that. Washes.
Hairspray. One thing that RV living definitely teaches you is how much stuff you actually need, because if you can't fit it in here, you're not going to use it because there's just not enough room for everything. So kind of teaches you what you actually need.
What the bare essentials are. Another storage pro tip is using these command hooks like everywhere. This is our recyclables bag here, and we have more over here for like our keys and George's leash and lanyards and stuff like that. The hooks have been helpful, and we've also thought about putting a shelf up here. This is sort of a bunch of open wall space that we could do something with if we wanted to, like maybe put the modem up there or the sound machine. Just haven't gotten around to it yet. Having this turf grass outside the door has been a huge help, especially in the muddy season in the winter. Having a place you can knock your boots off and step into the RV without shoes really kept things a lot cleaner, as much as it could anyway. Following some advice from the comments on our first RV video, we've done some revisions on the septic. layout here, we added this clear elbow with a back flush valve that we can put water back into the tanks and see what's coming out when we empty the tanks. And then this twist on gate valve allows us to do that. We can close this off so we can fill water into either the gray or black tank to help get multiple flushes out of it. And then this flexible hose here is serving as sort of a trap. So sewer gases and sewer flies can't come back up the pipe and into our tanks. There's always a blockage of water in that little trap. That's been a nice improvement as well. We just have the birds out in the lawn right now because we had to do some filming for another project where we needed them to be out in the open. This is where they're usually at.
You can see the clear outline.
Yeah, behind the camper, you can see the square where the chicken tractor usually sits, and we got it connected to our very redneck scrap building material chicken coop that I haphazardly constructed in a couple hours, like last year sometime when we had chickens on the way. But this is how you get into it. It's got a moon roof, so I like to call it, with a couple roosts in there, and it gets the job done. Keeps them safe at night from any predators.
These lucky birds actually got to sleep in the house before we did. We started raising them inside and then moved them outside at about 6 weeks old. They are now about 10.5 weeks old, and we can tell that most of them are actually going to be roosters. But they're having fun, scratching around. They like the chicken tractor, and during the day we put a little tarp over it to provide some extra shade, and they just have fun.
This is definitely a little bit of a redneck setup right next to the RV. Have our janky chicken coop, but it gets the job done and the birds are happy. And here's our livestock guardian dog, being a menace and scratching. Yes, that's exactly what you do, we see.
We'll be in, we're gonna come in. I know, you wanna play.
That's about all I had to mention. Do you have anything else you wanna say?
One last thing that I would mention is if you are living in an RV while building your house, one thing to prepare for mentally is just the amount of mental capacity it takes with some of the inconveniences. So like even I think we take for granted like the benefit of having a dishwasher or having a really nice stove or prep area for cooking. Like those inconveniences can add up over time. Or the fact that you have to like drive to go do laundry, and they can just take up brain space. And obviously that's so minor in the grand scheme of things, but when you have a lot of really big projects that you're working on, it is something that can kind of like build up over time. So if you can figure out what works for you early on, it will help.
Yeah, put some systems in place.
Yeah, put some systems in place. Decide how you're going to cook. For us, we decided to use the Instant Pot and the steamer, just things that will make things a little bit easier.
But it really has been a blessing to be able to be on the build site, not commuting to come take a measurement or anything like that, or just be able to get up and start working and work till late, come take a shower or take a nap or come get some food anytime you need it. Before we had the RV, we were like packing food here and whatnot. It made things a lot more inefficient. So there are some inefficiencies and some pains in the butt that do come with living in an RV at a build site, but overall, I think it's a real positive thing.
Yeah.
If you're planning on doing it or doing your own self-build, it's definitely something that I would do again if we take on another project like this again.
And honestly, I would think we would potentially prioritize getting utilities sooner, knowing what we know now, to try to get it ready so that we could live in an RV sooner in the project. Like when we first got the RV, we were like, wow, we wish we would have purchased this 6 months ago. But at that time we didn't have utilities, so that would have been added inconvenience to have to go dump the tanks or deal with electric. So if you are thinking about doing RV living while building a house, prioritize your utilities so you can get that stuff set up and use those as your hookups.
Get your septic or sewer connection in, a temp electric service, temp water from your well, and if you want to install a big propane tank or even a 100-gallon propane tank or something, at least temporarily, that would also be really handy as well. Not having to like cart the little tanks over to your nearest Tractor Supply or wherever you're getting your tanks filled up once or twice a week in the winter. That would save some time and headache as well, just taking that mental energy off you. Anyway, I think that's all we got. Hopefully you pick something up from this. And heck, if you're living in an RV right now, or if you're planning on it or have before, please leave some comments and share your experience. We'd love to hear your tips, tricks, and what your thoughts are on doing this kind of life we have enjoyed it overall. It's been a blessing, like I said, with the build site and everything. And it's something that we'll, I'm sure, look back on fondly. And that's part of why we make these videos too. So we have a little bit of a documentation for ourselves to look back on in many years. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.